Tom, have you remembered your sun cream?
Why, Brady?
Well, because it's time for hot takes. Oh my God, I messed that up. Keeping it in, I'm not cutting it out. It's
Stuffer Schindler has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend. And he takes that chance!
Double the games, double the fun. Welcome to the warm-up episode 69. Joining me, your host, Brady Frost, is Tom Bradshaw, and we're joined by David Hartrick today. How are you both?
Good. Very good.
Brilliant, Brady. Brilliant, mate. Yeah. How are you?
I'm good, Tom. First off, we're pleased to have you back after your collapsed podcast contract talks in Greece. I hope you're refocused and ready for the big run-in.
Yeah, it went all right out there, but it was just a bit too hot for me, so I had to come back and to the right climate to pod in.
Yeah, exactly. People underestimate that. You got a bit homesick and, just need this pod. Okay, lads. So obviously we're previewing two games here, and they are two big games in this big run of the three. Obviously, we got to a great start. So I thought we'd do it a little bit different with the format today. So we normally set the scene. We'll do it briefly for both teams, but I think as we head into Easter weekend, let's look at the state of play. So Huddersfield, we're third in the league, 41 games, and we also sit on 69 points. Forest, who, I think most outsiders or most people who kind of look at the Championship, they're kind of the form team. They do have 2 games in hand on Town. They're in 4th and 6th on 67. Luton and Sheffield United make up the other playoff places, having played the same number of games as us, 41, and both have 65 points. Blackburn, 7th, 41, 63 points. Boro, who Town play on Monday, as we'll come on to, they're 8th, 40 games, 62 points. You'll see why I'm reading loads of fixtures, because Luton play Forest on Friday, Sheffield United play Reading, and Boro are away to Bournemouth. Blackburn play Peterborough away. On Monday, Blackburn will play Stoke, Luton are away to Cardiff, Forest play West Brom, Sheffield United are away to Bristol City. Have I read loads of fixtures? Yes. Is that great podcast content? Probably not, but the scene is now set. Dave, before we get on to the games, Town got this pivotal week off to a great start with the win against Luton. Do you think that's going to give the team the confidence to finish strongly?
Yeah, very much so. I think the nature of that victory against Luton, I've been on. It's very, very hard for me because this is now my third podcast where I've talked about the Luton game.
Best for last,
I also talked about it on the Facebook Live for the club for the paper. I just think the nature of that game is, and I've said this on everyone, so I may as well complete the set. I just think we only think about 6 pointers in terms of relegation, but Town won a 6-pointer there because they took 3 points from Luton as well as earning 3 points themselves. And it was the nature of the victory as well. It was so controlled. We know Carlos Corberán loves a game after a big break like that. He loves the preparation time. He loves the fine detail and the work on the one-to-one battles on the training pitch. And I said to Steve before that game, I really fancied them to get something because of that. These games are coming in quick succession, so they're a bit of a different kettle of fish, to be brutally honest with you. And I have to say that because I have to say, to be brutally honest with you, on every podcast. But yeah, I just think they'll be absolutely buzzed. And the victory over Luton was one of those games where I think if they could have rolled on and played the next game the day after, I think they would have snapped your hand off, really.
Yeah, and Dave, don't be having people dig you out for your vocal tics. I always say after every point, or I think. So look forward to listening to that, guys, and the listeners. So enjoy. Tom, anyway, I don't know about your vocal tics, but I don't think we have the time. But
you're too professional, Tom. You're the professional of the three of us.
What does that say? Sorry, Tom. All right, sorry, get me in face then. Anyway, Tom, I'll stop insulting you. How are you feeling about these two games coming up? I think Monday might change how we're probably feeling about these ones. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. I'm kind of going off the back of what Dave just said there. It's like they are, especially the Boro one, I think QPR maybe. I mean, they've teetered away a little bit now. but they are two kind of 6-pointers. And even if you get a couple of draws, I was kind of thinking I wouldn't have been that disappointed if we'd have not lost all these 3 games, because they haven't gained on us then, those teams around us. And massive win the other night. And I think if you can maybe get a win against QPR and then not lose to Boro, 100% you're in the playoffs then.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've just made the case that I think you're pretty much home and hosed anyway on another podcast this afternoon. But I think arguably I'd say if you took 3 points from this, it's all but done. But if you took 4 points, I think it really would be pretty much done and dusted, really. So it's an important sequence of games, but it's also a pair of games where you can target that one on Friday for a win. QPR are rocky, and then you just roll the dice and see what you can get from Middlesbrough. It will be the third of a long week. You've got yourself into a position where if you lose it, so be it, is what it is.
Yeah, and we do have a terrible record at the Riverside, as me and Tom were talking before we're recording. But QPR is first. You're right, Dave. They have really dropped off. I think it's quite obvious. I think everyone's kind of seen that. But they're 11th in the table now. Same games as Town, 59 points. They're joint bottom of the form table in the last 10 games with Peterborough. They lost 5 in a row, lost 7 of the last 8. I mean, Tom, I suppose this is the one I always say. I suppose we said it a lot last season when Town were doing rubbish. Bad run of form's got to end at some point.
Yeah.
But can you see QPR springing a surprise in this one?
I don't know. Yeah, it is one of those, isn't it? 5 defeats in a row. That's hard to take that. I mean, Warburton really needs a win, and he must rise to the challenge. They've been a bit stale recently. Going against the grain in recent tactics must be his only option. So I think if they lose to us, then that's the playoff hope's gone, and they're toast for me. Did you like that? I'd written that earlier.
Yeah. I think we liked it, but I think you liked it more.
Yeah. I was like, I've got to get some bread puns in here for Matt Warburton, something.
Yeah. Well done for using your life there, Tom. Anyway, all right.
That's the only prep I've done tonight, though. So
okay, that's good. It's good to know. Dave, any bread puns to offer, or shall I ask you? Is this a game where Town should get 3 points?
Yeah, all they need is a slice of luck. No, I think, like, all joking aside, I think QPR, they are rocking. They have issues. They've got 1 or 2 players out injured. They've got QPR squad is the squad that you look at and you think this should be really good, but they've got an awful lot of the same type of player. They it doesn't really matter what the problem is. The answer is just to throw another attacking a player at it in Warburton's mind. And I think that you've got to be careful, right? Obviously, you can't take anything for granted. But I think the difference between this and, say, the Luton game is, like, the first sort of 60 minutes of the Luton game was 2 decent teams cancelling each other out and trying not to lose. Whereas I think on Friday against QPR, you set out to win that game. That's the difference. You go out to win it. And QPR's single biggest problem every time I've seen them, even when they've been really good, has been that they've got a lot of individuals. And I think if Town, it's all about really just keeping your defensive shape, keeping the space really small. Don't give anybody any space to operate in. And they tend to get really frustrated and really wound up, which again is a sign usually of a few individuals in the side. So I just don't think it's a game to fear for Town. That's the difference. I don't think it's a game to fear. They've got themselves in a position where me and Steve were saying from this sequence of 3 games, 4 points would be a great return. They've already got 3 in the bag and they've a chance to get 6, I think, here.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tom, I suppose, again, we're not a QPR pod, but I know QPR are in terrible form at the moment, but they do have a lot of injuries, but they still have good players. I do agree with Dave. I think it's maybe you look at some of the players in their team and they were great maybe 2 years ago. Some certainly getting on a bit, but who did you single out in this one from QPR?
Yeah, I think for the key player kind of side, coming up, especially looking at their previous games where they've conceded goals, is they need to make sure that back line's as solid as it can be. So it's a big loss that they've not got that Rob Dickie, because he's been pretty integral to that at the start of the season, and he's out now for the rest of the season, I think. I read. So Johan Barbet, I've got him as my key player because he didn't play against Preston, but it sounds like he might be back against Town, which I think they've missed. Them two out against Preston obviously didn't help. So I think having him back in there might just shore up that defence a little bit more. But yeah, I think when you're on a run like this, the first thing you can do is try and get a clean sheet and build from there then. So for me, yeah, defensively is where they need to be their strongest on Friday.
I think that's a really good point. Dave, were you also defensively minded for QPR when it came to a key man?
No, not really. I like Rob Dickie is a weird player. I know he's out for the game, but like his stats are crazy. He's really high on a lot of metrics, and every time I see him, he's crap. Every time I see him, I don't get where the difference is, to be honest. I think without naming an individual, for me, it's whoever they play as a 10, because they've got loads of options basically that can play there. And when QPR do play well, nearly everything is driven through a 10. I really like Elias Chair. I really like Chris Willock. I was gutted that Town didn't get him because it's funny, actually. I was talking to somebody at the club this week who was saying that within 10 minutes of him being at Huddersfield Town on the training pitch, Lee Bromby said, he's a 10, not a winger. And funnily enough, me and Stephen Chicken had the conversation as well at one point, and we thought he was a 10, not a winger. And they've got a couple of other options they can use as well. And Town just needs to, that's what they need to be wary of, because that's one area that QPR can still hurt you. So I think they've just got to, like I say, without naming an individual, it's just whoever picks up that 10 space has got to be watched really, really carefully, because that is what QPR do. They haven't, in truth, they haven't really got an awful lot more than that. That's the thing. But they play with forwards who need somebody to play off. You know, Lyndon Dykes needs feeding. They don't play with a Danny Ward who, you know, does half the work himself and picks up anything he can from anywhere else. So it's stop the supply, stop the goals, to be frank.
Yeah, really good point, and completely agree with you about Willock. I remember having this debate with Matt at the time when we were talking about, there was rumours about him getting him on a permanent. I said, do it. Matt said not. And to be Barry Partridge, who had the last laugh, that's all I'll say. But yeah, this is what we do now. Me and Matt like tease each other on the other podcast. So I'm sure that'll be fun. But you said a name who I chose as the key player, and I did go for Lyndon Dykes. I just think Charlie Austin's not doing it. I'm sure Town fans will be happy to hear that. That's famous last words. I've jinxed us now. Andre Gray again looks a bit off the boil recently, but Lyndon Dykes is a bit of a physical striker. You know, we saw Adebayo against our backline, and I thought Tom Lee's actually dealt with him very well. I was very impressed, but I just think, you know, like you say, sometimes you need someone. I imagine QPR will play like a typical away team. I mean, again, maybe we'll come on to it. You talked, Dave, about how many attackers they've got, but I do think if they need to relieve pressure, I think Lyndon Dykes can play that game, but you're right, he needs people feeding off him. But yeah, we will see. But yeah, we're Town podcast. Obviously, we're doing well. Tom's got his little Sup the Town scarf in the background. Dave, who have you selected as a Town key player for this one?
I think for the QPR game, I think it feels like a slight cop-out to say Lewis O'Brien, because Lewis O'Brien is always important for Town, no matter who they play. But I think in this sort of game where Town are likely to use Hogg in the exact same way they used him against Luton, which is to nominally play in midfield, but mainly drop into that back three when they're out of possession. Lewis O'Brien is Town are so fortunate to have a player who can pick up 1.5 roles in a midfielder's absence. And John Russell, I spoke at length about him on the Examiner pod today. I'm not quite as high on him as a lot of people are, but I think he's really, really good. I just think the problem is his lack of pace is what really sort of stops him from going to the next level. So again, it's like Lewis O'Brien is almost doing a quarter of his role as well. And this is the sort of importance of Lewis O'Brien. I don't think there's another midfielder in the league who could do what he's doing, where he could play in a 3, play in a 2, or play in a 4, and he ends up doing half of someone else's job as well. So I think for this one, with the way QPR are likely to play, which is, I think they'll probably line up in some variation of a 4-2-3-1-ish type formation just to try and keep it tight at the back. I think O'Brien's running is going to be pretty vital, really, because it's not just about what he does when he's got the ball at his feet. It's about the space he opens up for others.
Yeah, great insight. And, some people might think it's a cop-out, but Lewis O'Brien's the best player and he's in amazing form. And, so, it's hard to disagree. Tom, did you go for Lewis? Did you go for anyone different?
I've gone with Danny Ward as my key player. Just, I thought because he'd been away for a couple of games, I don't think he had the best game the other night. He seemed to foul a lot of people, which was interesting. I know he likes to get stuck in. Maybe he was a bit too excited, but I just think with the loss of some of their players at the back, and if Danny Ward can put in one of those performances where he's just harrowing words.
Words. They are words. Don't know if they're right words, but yeah.
When he's chasing people down and just getting in the face of them and things like that. Basically, the performance he had away at Reading, I thought that was his best performance. He was all over the place that game. Awesome. I just think he'll cause him a lot of trouble. Yeah,
and my favourite stat, Tom, when Ward has scored or assisted when it lost this season, and that's still not broken yet. There's one for you, Dave. You like your stats?
What do you think of his new haircut? Do you like it?
I did miss it. He was looking very 80s before.
He's gone from looking about 35 to looking about 13.
Yeah, he has, hasn't he? Yeah. It is crazy how much hair he had before. It was but it's a bit like the Tom Lee's headband now. Is the lack of hair? Do you think it was magic hair, or gave him a bit of like George Best, made him feel like it was George Best or something?
We'll see. This is what we do on this podcast. We ask the tough questions. But speaking of harrying, I've gone for Harry and Toffolo, if you like, as my key player, just because I think, because he was more disciplined against Luton. But I think this is a game, they're in poor form, and Dave, you're right. We need to play to win, and I think we can get at them. They're in a bad run of form, and I'd expect him to contribute more, Toffolo, in an attacking sense, and cause some overloads. And I do think this is a game where we could get real joy. Especially it's Good Friday. It's on TV. I think the crowd's going to be great. I think it's one of them where we can really get behind the players and hopefully see something special. But yeah, we will see. But let's not hear from us. We'll hear from the QPR perspective now. So I caught up with Clive from the QPR fan site Loft for Words ahead of the game, and here's what he had to say.
We've lost to a pub side. We've literally lost to a pub side.
Hi Clive, thanks for joining me. So can you let us know what the situation is with QPR at the moment? There's been rumours about Mark Warburton leaving, the team's out of form. What's happening?
What is happening at QPR, mate? It's a great question, and if I knew the answer or was able to answer it, I suspect I should probably be in charge, because I don't think those in charge do know what's gone on or what's caused it. Just the absolute scale of the drop-off has caught everybody by surprise. I think even the most pessimistic QPR fan would have struggled to predict that we would fall off to the extent we have. I mean, even mid-February, we went up to Blackburn for a TV game, and if we'd won that, we would have gone second. Early March, we did win at Luton, and that put us back to fourth in the league. And then you look this Friday, by the time we kick off our game, we could be as low as 14th. So That's a remarkable drop off for a team that had been in such good form and such good league position for so long. What's caused it? I mean, this is the big debate at the minute. I mean, the team has had some misfortune and some bad luck. We lost our goalkeeper Seny Dieng first to AFCON and then to a season-ending injury in that Blackburn game. He's very, very important to the way that we play out from the back. He's got distribution and out balls that our other goalkeepers don't have, and without him we have rather turned into one of those boring Swansea type teams that just knock it around endlessly among the back three, never hoping to go anywhere, never threatening the opposition, boring everybody to death. We're still the 5th top scorers in the league, which tells you how many goals we scored in the first 2/3 of the season, but we just don't look like scoring anymore. We lost, we come into this on 5 defeats in a row, and the first 4 of those against Forest, Peterborough, Fulham and Sheffield United, we only had 5 shots on target across those 4 games, so we've gone from being one of the top scorers in the league to doing that. We're often quite boring to watch now. And Dieng being out has had a big influence in that. His replacement, Jordan Archer, was never likely to be good enough to replace him. I thought that was a poor signing in the summer. He got injured in a penalty shootout in the FA Cup. We replaced him with David Marshall from Derby, who hadn't played since the previous season. He started well on a shot-stopping level, but his distribution's nowhere near Dieng. He then got injured at Nottingham Forest. We replaced him with Kieran Westwood, who again hadn't played since last season and doesn't have the distribution of Dieng. He then got ill at Preston at the weekend in the warm-up, so we ended up with the youth team goalkeeper in goal. You know, not many teams would go through 5 goalkeepers. That's been very unlucky. We've also lost the Player of the Year, Chris Willock, to a season-ending injury. Rob Dickey's out for the season, so there has been some injuries that they've had to deal with and some bad luck. I think it's also probably worth saying that the XG evangelists and the people that look at those trendy metrics and hang a lot of their hat on and put a lot of stock in will tell you that QPR were probably in an artificially high league position. The XG and things like that said we should have been 9th or 10th when we were 3rd or 4th. So there has been a degree of regressing to the mean, perhaps. I don't know how much stock I place in that myself. I thought we were playing reasonably well, and we only lost 14 games in the whole of 2021. If you'd taken our form January to January was title winning form. Just typical of QPR to do it January to January and not August to May. So that's been unfortunate. And like I say, it's the scale of the drop off to go from that only losing 14 games in the whole year, title winning form. I mean, even in January we went unbeaten in 7 games, 5 wins, 2 draws. Through January we were thinking that we could probably push Bournemouth for 2nd and we would be right up there. That was how we were feeling at that point. And then literally overnight, like the last game of January, we beat Reading 4-0. And then a week later, we lost 2-0 at Peterborough in the FA Cup. Peterborough, the whipping boys of the division, have beaten us 3 times now, twice in this run. To go from winning 4-0 one week to losing 2-0 at Peterborough the next. And then we've just fallen apart completely since then. We've won 2 of 14 games. We've lost 10 of those, lost 7 of the last 8. Like I say, we're boring to watch. We don't look like we're going to score. And that's just so completely the opposite of what was happening the previous year. I think if you do look at 2021, the turnaround at the back end of last season was driven by the 4 loan signings. Sam Field, Jordi Device, Charlie Austin, Stefan Johansson, and we were all overjoyed to get those guys on permanent deals for this year. It was a big part of the reason we were all very optimistic about this season, getting those guys. Jordi Device has been injured and they've loaned him out. Charlie Austin and Stefan Johansson, sadly, having got decent contracts at QPR and tied up a lot of our budget, have been nowhere near the level of last season, and you're starting to wonder whether they've hit the wall physically. And that's going to be the end of them, which would be very bad news for us, having put them on those contracts. The form of Austin in particular is a concern, and the strikers, just aren't doing it. Andre Gray's the only one you could sort of say is in any kind of form, but not really. And Lee Wallace and Albert Adoma were also very important at various stages of 2021 to that uptick in form, and they're getting on in years and have also they look like they've hit the wall. Albert Adoma, his performance at Sheffield United compared to what he was doing earlier in the season was remarkably bad. Like, it just almost like he couldn't lift the ball off the floor when he was kicking it. Very strange. So, like I say, you've lost all your goalkeepers, you've lost your player of the year to injury. 4 of your better senior players have all hit a wall at the same time. That's a lot for a team to cope with, all the usual. That's a lot for a team to cope with, all the usual stuff about budgets and trying to compete with the parachute payments, small squad, plus all of that is a lot for a team to cope with, I guess. The thing that's nagging everybody is the scale of the drop-off and the way the style of play has just gone completely. The fact that we've gone from one of the best teams to watch to one of the worst, just the sheer number of defeats, the fact that we don't look like we're going to score, it's making everybody feel like something else has happened, that something's gone on behind the scenes. If it has, they're doing well to keep a lid on it, because QPR usually leaks like a sieve and none of us have heard anything. But just the sheer magnitude of the drop-off, like I say, literally overnight we went from beating Reading 4-0, unbeaten all month, manager of the month, player of the month, to losing at Peterborough and then losing at Barnsley the week after and collapsing from there. Just the sheer scale of it makes it look and feel like something else has gone on, like they've fallen out with each other or something along those lines. But we've heard nothing, and we're just a season that promised so much. We were all cancelling our plans for May because we thought we were going to be in the playoffs, and now it's so sad, really, because like I say, it promised so much and it was such a good season for so long, and now we're stuck doing a lot of our most northern and expensive away games all at the end of the season and setting off fully expecting that we've already lost before we even travel. It's just it's a soul destroyer, really.
How are you feeling about the game on Friday and your playoff chances?
Well, as you can probably tell from my first answer, I am not feeling good about Friday. I'm really only travelling and going to the game so I can write about it for the website. We're back down to the diehards away from home now. I don't think anybody travelling on Friday is expecting anything other than a defeat, 2-0, something like that. And sadly, we just feel like the playoff chances have gone completely now. We'd probably have to win all 5 games to get in there. And at the moment, I think this isn't even me being overly pessimistic at the moment. It really feels like Derby at home on Easter Monday is the only thing standing between us and finishing the season with 10 straight defeats, which, like I say, given how well we'd played for such a long period of time, all the way through 2021 and the start of this year, given how well we'd played, to be saying that, as I said in the first answer, the scale of that drop-off is remarkable, has caught a lot of us by surprise, and a lot of people are asking questions. Obviously, Mark Warburton's now under pressure, having previously been considered probably our best manager since Neil Warnock. Now he's under pressure and fighting for his job. And if we were to finish the season with something like 10 straight defeats or 9 defeats or whatever, you can't see him surviving, which would be a terrible shame, because he's done a great job over the 3 years. So turn the team around while cutting the budget. All of that stuff is still valid, but modern football managers don't survive runs like we're on. So you wonder what the summer holds, what kind of alternative they would be able to get. And again, it's just to be talking like this and be in this position from the position we were in at the end of January, start of February, is just remarkable, really. And we're all struggling to get our heads around it.
And finally, where do you expect the game to be won and lost from QPR's perspective?
I mean, it's difficult to see how we're going to set up on Friday, because in addition to everything else, we're now missing just so many key players. Rob Dickey, Johan Barbe, all the goalkeepers, Chris Willock. The injuries have really caught up with us. We played a back 3 for a year and a half basically, but we just ran out of defenders and went back to a 4 last week at Preston. That did at least see us attack a little bit more. We had enough chances to get a result at Preston and missed those, which is at least better than we'd done in the previous few games. But it left us way more open at the back than we have been. And actually, the youth team keeper that came in, Murphy Mahoney, made a number of saves to keep that score respectable. So it's difficult to know what sort of a team we'll put out. Like I say, most of our recent games have just been us knocking it around aimlessly at the back until we lose the ball and concede a goal. So I'd expect Huddersfield to come out sort of all guns, high tempo, high press, and us not to be able to live with it. That's certainly how it went at Sheffield United last week. Preston were fairly ropey against us on Saturday and still came out with a win. As you can tell, I'm not very confident, and I don't think I'm just being unduly pessimistic either. I think most QPR fans you speak to would say the same thing.
Okay, cool. So we've heard from Clive. So guys, again, we're mixing up the format a little bit here. So in terms of lineup, I'm not going to get you to name every single player you think you can play, unless, Dave, you want to pick England's rightful number one. I mean, I doubt you're not going to pick him. But
stitched up by a headline.
Most 17 clean sheets, though, can't disagree. But
look at him! Look at him! He's flying. He is flying.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and just in case there's anyone listening who doesn't know why they're laughing at me, it's because I wrote an article comparing him extremely favourably to England's Sam Johnson. And it was headline, and quite rightly, because it got a load of hits and it got a load of traction and it got mentioned on live commentary. So it was exactly the right decision, no issue with it. But yes, I did get a lot of people claiming I was pushing him to be England's number one, and I wasn't.
Well, I mean, I can't believe you said you Pickford out and Nichols in. I think that's where you went wrong, Dave. Anyway, I'll stop teasing you. Would you change the lineup for this one? Obviously, there's. Sorry. Are you going to make any changes for this? Obviously, we had 4 changes for the Luton game. Is this a game, again, not to get ahead of ourselves, but would you rotate with a look ahead to Boro maybe, or what?
No, I would rotate at Boro. I'd keep the same 11 for this one, if I'm honest. I think they played so well, so disciplined. I think Corbyn's probably worked with them a hell of a lot over the 2 sort of fairly long breaks between games to get them ready for that game. I would have thought he may have made the plan as similar as possible to play against QPR, which is press high, win your individual battles, look for where the spaces are. So I would keep the same 11 and then mix it up a bit for the Boro game.
Yeah, I think that's hard to disagree with. Tom, did you go for something similar, or are you mixing it up a bit?
Yeah, I think basically similar. Maybe I'd take Sanani out and put Holmes in, but that's a very small maybe. I think, like Dave said, the way they played the other night, I think for me that was best performance of the season, especially the way we set up and tactics, etc. Was awesome. And yeah, make those changes against Boro, which is going to be a completely different game away at the Riverside. Historically struggle against them. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a full house here. I think keep the same 11. It just depends how the game goes, because I do think we could get an early lead and be comfortable. So maybe rather than tweak the starting lineup, it's more a case of maybe bring people off when the game looks a bit more settled. But we will see. We will see. Dave, what would your score prediction be for the QPR game before we move on to Boro then?
For a team with a load of attacking intent, they're actually crap on the break. So I think Town have got a good chance of another clean sheet here, and I think it could be a relatively comfortable 2-0.
Yeah, famous. Yeah, again, I've gone for the same, to be honest, because I remember actually the game you and Steve invited me to when Eze was playing for QPR, and it was a comfortable 2-0 win in the end. And I feel like it's just got the makings of that.
Was that when he was brilliant first half, Eze, wasn't he? And then just after half time, Hoggy snapped him in 2 with a challenge over on the far side, and he just went missing, didn't he, for the rest of the game?
Yes, I remember. And I remember as well because Steve was like, don't celebrate when they score. And I did, but then it was kind of a half celebration. I was like, oh, no, okay, yeah. But yes, you can't, I think Eze nutmegged Hoggy for that, and that's why he got the snap, because you don't do that to Jonathan Hogg. You'll learn the hard way.
Yeah.
Tom, have you gone for a win in this one? Have you gone for 2-0 as well?
I'm feeling very confident, and maybe that's a bad sign, but I'm actually going to go 4-0 to Town.
Jesus. Okay, I like it.
I think they're on such a bad run, Brady, and like Dave said, and you both said, they're struggling to score. The way they play, the way we set up, hopefully should really work. And we're due a big one, aren't we? So
fair enough. That is us, all three of us condemning Town to a surprise defeat there. So we'll move on because we've also got another game to preview, which is Boro. So interesting one this, because when the game kicks off, they could potentially be in the playoff places. We don't know the result because obviously we're recording this before Friday against Bournemouth. But what surprised me is, because I think, apart from Forest, I would say Boro are probably one of the other form teams. They've actually lost their last 2 home games against Hull and Fulham. So a bit of a, gives you a slimmer of hope. I mean, Town are a good side. I'm not saying, even though we've got the bad record, I don't think it's a definite defeat. But Dave, this is a tougher test, you would say, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, that's not to write QPR off totally, but Boro Chris Wilder is an extremely good manager. And I think the problem they have at the moment, and why they've struggled a little bit for consistency, is that they have a squad full of decent players, which sounds damning with faint praise, but they don't really have a couple of real difference makers in there, which I'm sure they will look to sort over the transfer window, because Middlesbrough are never shy around a transfer window, and Wilder will want his own men in. And I think that they're an interesting side, Middlesbrough, because they're a side that they found themselves in the sort of playoff mix. And weirdly, I think the worst thing that could happen for them is if they went up, because they are like at probably step 2 of a 10-step transition into something else. So it's sort of a testament really to their manager and the level they have got. And the thing is, they've got so many players in that squad who on their day can be brilliant, but are usually a 6 out of 10. And what I mean by that is they can come to the John Smiths and Duncan Watmore out of nowhere, can suddenly produce a 9 out of 10 performance and be absolutely brilliant and score a couple of worldies. That's what this side is capable of. So it is a bigger test, but I do feel Town can put themselves in the position where they can rotate a little bit, and if they lose, so be it.
Yeah, hard to disagree. Tom, I mean, we were looking at the kind of head-to-head before this. Town have lost their previous 2 games against Boro 2-1. Do you think they can better the results in this one, or do you think it's maybe a bridge too far?
I'd be setting out for a draw. I'd be being really boring here and basically saying not lose. Let's just not lose this game. But yeah, Boro's interesting one. One win in the last 10 versus them for Town, which isn't nice to see on paper, is it? But they've got Bournemouth next, which, if you're listening to this after, they've either won or lost, who knows, or drawn. But that's difficult. That's another difficult game. It could come down to they have to beat Town to be even thinking about getting in the playoffs, which in itself is another pressure situation. It's all ifs and buts, really, isn't it? I think with Boro, and different results can put different mentalities on it. I was speaking to my mate earlier. It's like we're already predicting what's going to happen at the end of the season stuff, and it's like when we play Barnsley, they could be down, but that means they might be playing with absolute no fear. Do you know what I mean? That kind of thing. So tough test, but the way Town are playing, and I took such confidence from that Luton game. I won't put it past us to go up there and have a decent game.
Yeah. No, I think, we touched on it. I know we're not the review pod, but it was a huge win, and I think you've touched on it on your many podcast appearances this week, Dave. I think it was just an impressive performance, as well. It was very controlled, but I think you spot on, Tom. For me, it's all about the Bournemouth result for them and how this one goes, because I do think if they lose, I'm not saying they're out of it, but nerves start to go. And I think they're one of their teams, and because I really rate Chris Wilder as a manager, I think if they don't go up this season. I wouldn't be surprised if they go up next season. I think he's just that good, and you know, Steve Gibson's not afraid to chuck a few bob at players. So I think that's a bit of a winning combination. So we'll see. It's a bit of a hard one to judge, but you know, it is Easter, so that's why we're previewing 2 in a row. But Dave, did you go for anyone interesting from the Middlesbrough side? You said some interesting players, but not a difference maker.
Yeah, their strength is in midfield. They'll play a 3-5-2 because that's what Chris Wilder does. And I think that Johnny Howson is just an excellent player, really. Just a really, really solid all-round player. He's not a 9 out of 10 in anything, but he's a 7 out of 10 in everything. That's the thing. And when he's ticking along and he's on form, it frees up Matt Crooks a lot. Who has been superb this season and has, you know, it's nice to see a player like Matt Crooks who can develop like that and be given the room and the time to develop, because there's no denying early on in his career he did not look like a professional footballer, shall we say. And yeah, he is now, you know, a really, really good Championship midfielder. So I think Howson is the one that they'll probably look to run everything through. But just as a slightly rogue shout, Paddy McNair is Wilder's chosen overlapping defender more often than not, so keep an eye on him.
He's quite good at free kicks, McNair, as well, isn't he? Like, surprisingly so. So yeah, do watch out for that one. I went for Tavernier. Marcus Tavernier is on the right in a 3-5-2. I think he's one of them where on his day he can be amazing. He's maybe a little bit inconsistent, but I wouldn't be surprised if you know, he kind of improves the more Wilder gets to work with him. He's got 5 assists this season actually, which is quite good. So yeah, I just think him combining with the 2 strikers makes it a bit of a tough one. Dave, I was going to ask actually before I came on to Tom and ask him his key player, Aaron Connolly, you know, from your parish on loan there. How's he been doing? Do you rate him?
No. The problem with Aaron Connolly is, and don't worry, I'm not going to say anything libelous. Mind you, it's not my podcast.
We don't care.
Maybe,
yeah, go for it.
We
don't care.
Yeah, we don't. Bring him on.
It would be fair to say that I think Aaron Connolly absolutely loves being a footballer. It's just that sometimes he has to play football, which is a bit annoying. When he was in Brighton, he got very much tarred with a lot of brushes, but, you know, very little smoke without fire, shall we say. He was going out an awful lot. He was enjoying life off the pitch far more than on it. The Middlesbrough move was to get him to play some football and to put him in the shop window a little bit. And he's been struggling. He's done exactly what he did at Brighton, really, which is, you know, he really needs to knuckle down. And if he wants to be a footballer, he's got to actually play football. So he's got a big decision over the summer, that lad, shall we say, because I don't think Middlesbrough will be lollying up for him. And I think the level of clubs that are willing to pay for him might surprise him a little bit, shall we say. So cut to him scoring 4 against Town and running off, celebrating wildly with the fans. But no, he's put it this way. If we could go back and do it all again, all the time we put into Aaron Connolly, I would take off him and put into Ryan Longman instead.
Interesting.
He might come and do an Adebayor in front of you after hearing that, Biff.
Absolutely no problem whatsoever.
Wilder's going to clip this, and I know you normally have the cutouts on the dressing room. She's going to play it on a speaker to motivate him.
So, well, that after we all have just ripped into QPR for 15 minutes.
Yeah, 4-0.
Yeah.
Love how you're laughing at your own prediction. I mean, to be fair, Deb, there's a lot of distractions in Boro. You know, can't beat a good Palmer, can you? So,
this is it. I think, like I say, I'm not going to say anything libelous, so I'm not going to say any of the rumours or anything like that. But I think he's a really good player. But the problem is he needs to get back to the point where he is actually putting the work in, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Well, you can tell us the libelous stuff after. That's fine. Tom, who did you pick? Because we don't have lawyers. It might surprise you guys, but I think we'd do quite bad in a court case. Tom.
I went with Duncan Watmore just because was it 3 goals in the last 2 games against Town? So it's just, is he one of those players that just like scoring against Town potentially? I've always quite liked him. He reminds me of Joe Lolly. In the kind of the way he plays. And he just seemed to struggle against him recently. So was it 7 goals this season, 4 assists? Isn't a bad return either for him, because did he have quite a bad injury a few seasons ago when he were at Sunderland and had to work back from that? So it's good that he's still in the Championship, I think, because I've always liked him as a player.
Yeah, and as I always say, another ginger, got to respect it. And he's, I think I said this last time because one of us picked Watmore. He's again, I think he's one of those footballers that always gets marked out for being intelligent because he's got quite a high level degree, or who knows, because that's how you judge footballers apparently. We'll move on. Dave, what about your key player from a Town perspective? Are you defensive for this one, or are you going to attack?
I think there's a lot of sense in what Tom was saying about maybe you go up there and you try to produce another Blackburn away performance and try and see if you can take a point. But I also think Town need to just shuffle the pack a little bit. I don't think they need to make massive changes, but obviously I think you don't want to blow Pippa up again. So I think really you've got to look at that right-hand side. Do you move Thomas back into midfield on that side, etc.? So I think you have to make a couple of changes, but the one inevitable, the one that will be there because he's always there and he's played more minutes than anyone else, is Sorba Thomas. And he is, that lack of difference makers that I think Boro have got. Sorba Thomas is Town's difference maker, whether it be from set pieces or open play. I thought he was brilliant against Luton, and his performance didn't really get the. It was a defender's game, so obviously Hogg and Lees took a lot of the headlines. Lewis O'Brien got the club vote on social media, and got Sky Sports' man of the match, which I thought was a bit odd because I didn't actually think it was his best game, weirdly. But I thought Sorba Thomas was absolutely brilliant, and I think particularly in away games, and particularly if Corberan wants to change it and potentially go back to the 4-4-2, Thomas is that good option to actually play in the 2 as the out ball, and to give them a way to play on the break. So I think Sorba's quite a big one for that game.
No, good point. And Dave, I was going to ask actually, because this has been a discussion I've had with a few Town fans. Obviously, Sorba's played a lot of minutes. Do you think he probably needs a rest in one of these, or maybe not starting?
I think if you were going to rest him, you would have rested him in November. Right. He's just the thing is, he is physically not suffering at the moment, and weirdly, you can actually do more harm by taking a player out because it disrupts their rhythm and suddenly they come back in and they pick up a small muscle strain or something. And Town really can't afford to lose Sorba. He is. They've got a few players that they really, really can't afford to lose, and Thomas is probably at the top of that list alongside Lee Nichols. And I think at the moment there's a reason Carlos Corberan keeps playing him relentlessly, and that's because A, it's what Sorba wants and he wants to be played that way, and B, because he's right where he needs to be physically. And I think while he's there, just keep him there. Just keep him there. If he runs out of steam in the playoffs, no Town fan can argue with that because he's given everything he possibly can this season. But no, I think you just keep going with him for the minute.
Yeah, fair enough. Prove that wrong. And you said no Town fan can argue with that. I think some could, Dave. But Tom, who did you pick as a key player for this one?
I'm going to take a leaf out the old Brady book of quotes, and I'm going to say, I think this is a perfect game for Jordan Rhodes. But I honestly do, and I think like Dave's touched on the changes, and I think maybe Rhodes will get a start up at Boro. And I think one thing I've been really impressed with him when he has come on, he is different to Danny Ward, but he's a bit. It's the smartness he has around football, the way he holds it up, the way he kind of just takes that little touch and draws that foul in and stuff. It's different to how Ward does it, and I just think in this kind of game where I'd like to see us just be a bit conservative and maybe not lose, I think Rhodes would help us out a bit in that.
Yeah, I thought actually in the game against Luton, he did exactly what you'd want him to do when he came on. He did it so well, bought the fouls, and yeah, I think that's an interesting pick. You guys have gone a bit more attacking than me. I went for Tom Lees for this one because I do think it's going to be a bit of a tougher test. And I just, again, running out of good things to say about Tom Lees, but it's funny, I had to do for the QPR Clive we had from earlier, I had to do a bit of a piece for him on our season, and I just forgot the reputation he got from Sheffield Wednesday. I think you could argue he was a bit of a scapegoat, but the expectations below, and he's been absolutely fantastic. And again, I thought Pearson out, Adebayo, he's in great form, and the one that got away, I thought he just dealt with him so well. And I just think he's, particularly with Pearson out and Colwell, who I heard you on the other pod earlier, Dave. I think he's coming to good form again. I think that's a really good partnership, Lees and Colwell, and certainly the key man for me. What else can you say about him? He's just been fantastic. I think they've got so many arguments for players of the season, but he's right up there for me.
Yeah. Absolutely. I will, at the end of the season, I will write a love letter to Tom Lees at some point over the summer, and I can't wait, to be honest with you. I think he's been brilliant, and I think his game has changed a lot, actually. But part of that is the confidence he's had in the centre-backs who've played alongside him, and that makes a big difference too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Cool. So it's time for another view from the other side. So let's hear about the Middlesbrough side of things. So I caught with Johnny from the Boro Breakdown ahead of this one, and here's what he had to say.
We've lost to a pub side. We've literally lost to a pub side.
Hi, Johnny. Thanks for joining me. So we knew Chris Wilder was a good manager, but did you expect him to make such an impact so quickly?
Yeah, no problem at all, mate. But in terms of Wilder, and since he's came in, everyone knew that he was a good manager. There's no doubt about it. I think the job he's done with every club he's been at, and especially at Sheffield United as well, we knew we hit gold with him coming in. We knew he'd adapt the current playing squad, he'd bring you through, and that really blends in with the identity of the football club. In terms of doing it so quickly, I don't think anyone expected him to do it in such a short space of time. But the players have adapted to it really well. I think there was this kind of style under Neil Warnock where it wasn't really working out and we'd outgrown him, and we really needed to go back to basics, do the basics well, and also adapt to a style which really suited us in a back three. And we've done that ever since. We've had some really good form, and now we're heading towards the playoffs, which really at the start of the season we probably shouldn't have been anywhere near under the former regime.
And how are you feeling about the game on Monday and your playoff chances?
Yeah, I think in terms of the game on Monday, it's a difficult one. I think you guys have been in a fantastic form this season. The turnaround Carlos and his team have done with this current crop of players has been superb, and it's very underrated and went under the radar of how well of a job he's actually doing. I think the squad that Huddersfield have are really strong, underrated, and I think you thoroughly deserve to be where you are this season, especially when I've watched you a couple of times. But in terms of the game itself, I think we can go in there with confidence. We have beat you earlier this season away from home, which I think we can go into this game knowing that we've beat you before. Can we do it again? And if we do get a good result against you and against Bournemouth on the Friday afternoon, our playoff chances are really good. I think it's between us and Luton, and hopefully we can get enough points to try and secure that last place.
And finally, where do you expect the game to be won or lost from Middlesbrough's perspective?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really difficult game for both sides on the Monday. I think it could be quite rigid, probably in the first 10 to 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whilst both teams try and get a foothold in the game. But in terms of Boro's perspective, when I look at Huddersfield, and I really do see that weakness with the ball through in behind, 1-2s on the right hand side, maybe, or on the wings, try to get in, cause the overloads, and try to obviously to run in behind of the Huddersfield defence. And I think that's where we'll probably try and dominate. Isaiah Jones on that right-hand side, Mark Bowler, who just came back from a long-term injury on the left, which has given us much more balance. I think if we're able to try and use that width well and try to use intricate play, I think we could have a really good chance to get a result here. But I think knowing that the strengths that Huddersfield have, I think we've been on our A game, and hopefully we can do that. I'm hoping we win. I'm going for a 1-0 Boro win, and if that happens, I'll be a very, very happy man. But in terms of you guys, I think you're going to do really, really well for the remainder of the season, and hopefully we see you in the playoffs.
Right, guys, it's time for Return to the Mac.
Mustafa Schindler has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend. De Potter's got the better. Yeah! And Laurent De Potter scored! What a goal, Aaron Moy! An absolute thunderbolt delivered all the way from Australia.
Return to the Mac.
There we go. I've got a little bit quieter. It's getting a bit more tense because we've got 2 games to pick from. This Return to the Mac pick is going to cover us for 2. So it's big guns. It's time to use the big guns. This is where Dave comes in and picks Aaron Moy, like all our guests have done recently, and we just have to scramble around and go, but so we'll go with you, Dave. Are you going to put us out of our misery, or have you gone for an interesting choice?
Well, I think you need a bit of a difference maker and a bit of proven quality. So I'm going with Florent Hadergenai. No, I'm not really.
Sorry, just for Tom's reaction there.
I think, like, I've tried before to steer clear of the promotion side or the Premier League side, but it's almost impossible when you look at, if you try to do it seriously and try to think, right, who could come in? Because, like, the obvious answer is just to go Dennis Law every week, right? Because he was just so good. So I've tried to look at what Carlos Corberán actually wants. And I think one of the things that's clear over the last 2 months is that he would, if he had the option, he would quite like to play a 2 up front. And Rhodes and Ward don't really work. It's not that they can't work together or can't play together, but the problem is a lot of it is about getting into the same sort of spaces, and I don't think it quite works. I think the player I'd bring back for these two, just to have a different option and to potentially start at Boro, would be Steve Mounier, who he was a lot more mobile than Rhodes, a lot more physical than Rhodes. And the idea of Mounier lining up for a Sorba Thomas corner or set piece is quite interesting, I think. So it feels boring to go with somebody from the sort of very recent past and a big name, but I think it probably would be Mounier who could make the difference for me, really, over the next couple.
Got a lot of time for that. Listeners will know how much I love Steve, and this is my own hot take. Still think he could have been a 20-goal a season striker in the Championship if we'd played to him more. So absolutely, Sorba Thomas delivery, Steve Mounier header. You could just see that absolutely racking him up. So really, really good pick for me, Dave. Showing a bit of favouritism there, but Tom, who've you gone for?
I've got 2, Brady. So
okay.
One's more for the QPR game, for the home game.
So you can go for that.
My return to the Mac is the broomstick that they used for the dizzy penalties, because I don't get why that left anyway. That's
the winner. The winner.
Yeah,
this
Premier
week.
League, wasn't it? Like, Premier 2, not good enough for the Premier League. Dizzy penalties. It was like one of the best things ever, that halftime dizzy penalties. So I'll just leave it there. I won't, because I'm not going to go with the other one, because I'll just get slated for it.
All right. Okay, are you going to save that for another day? I think I know who we're talking about here.
Yeah. Everyone probably know, yeah.
Tom, do you remember? And I always tell this story because I think it's like one of the most northern prizes. Do you remember when it was kick the ball in the shed, like in the roof of the shed,
yeah,
to win the shed?
Yeah,
I think that's just like
yeah. Why they need to bring back a bit of halftime entertainment, I think. I mean,
do.
golden gambles, like
It was. Do you remember when it used to be kick the ball into the boot of the car?
Yeah.
They used to bring the car onto the corner of the pitch, and you'd have to boot the ball in. Yeah, remember that?
And then it was downgraded to a shed.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember being like, who would want that? And then, like, you know, obviously I'd go and stepdad and he'd be like, oh, I could do with a shed, actually. So they know their audience. Okay, Dizzy penalties. Oh, the broomstick. Are we being specific?
Well, that's if you want to put a picture up, you can put a picture of a broomstick.
Okay, I only have 25 characters in the poll, so we'll see what I can fit. I'll do my best. Okay, I've not gone for a silly one because, you know, I'm a super serious guy.
Mine's not silly. That's a serious point that I'm tabling for Town to bring back Dizzy penalties.
You know, if there was an Athletic Town writer, I think you could make a strong argument for a 10,000 word piece on how they lost their magic after Dizzy penalties stopped. Dave, one for the summer, actually, if you've got some ones to fill.
Yeah, trust me, I'll need it.
Great. Well, I expect this now. I'll be disappointed if you don't do it. So my choice, I've gone for, I think it's because Pearson's out. Naby, God love him. What a cameo that was on Monday. I do just think I don't like him as much in a 2. And I think we're missing Pearson, missing that type of player who's going to put his all on the line, and think we might need it, particularly in the second game, although result dependent. So I've gone for Peter Clark. I just think you need a battler, you know, maybe not so much the QPR game, but I just think that influence. I know you've got Hogg, but I just think Pearson's been great this season and we need someone with a similar mould. So I've gone for Peter Clark. Joe, who will listen to this, will love that shout. I'm pretty sure he's Joe's favourite player. Matt, you know, I think Matt has some interesting words on Peter Clark. Not so much, but, you know, we will see. So with the lineup for this, Tom, what would you do? You talked about Rhodes coming in. Is there any other changes you might make?
I'd probably put Turton back in there. Maybe bring Aiton in for one of the midfielders. I think, like Dave said, I think you're going to see more changes in this game. Just because, especially if we beat QPR, you kind of might have that little buffer where you don't want to see it as a doesn't matter game, but maybe just doing the classic get 10 men behind the ball for 90 minutes and change it up. But I think like Turton would shore that defence up a bit more. Maybe Aiton, give one of the lads in the middle a rest, so either O'Brien or Russell. And then you've got like Holmes and Karoma who can slot in up front with those two wingers as well. So there's options there, isn't there? I think that's the beautiful thing this season is there's not one player that I'm looking at who'd come in that I'd be a bit like, worried about. I mean, you mentioned Naby Sarr, but how vital was he against Luton overnight? He came on. Did he win 5 headers? 1 was a goal, and the other 4 were really important clearances. So, not saying give him 90 minutes, but I just think this squad this season, what a job they've done.
Absolutely. You touched on Karoma there as well. I feel like this could be a Karoma game. I'd picked him in this. Again, sorry to plug your podcast, Dave, but I think it was interesting what you guys were saying about the Aiton Russell conversation and how, you know, obviously our listeners will listen to your pod, but if you haven't, I'd go listen to that because, again, I was kind of like, I feel like Aiton could maybe have played more, but I think the emergence of Russell is, you know, they're kind of putting their faith in someone who's probably going to stick around for a bit longer.
Yeah, I completely see the sense of it as well, because I think that they genuinely see, I don't know, if you want to run with 3 first-team central midfielders next season, to whether you play a 2 or a 3, I think they genuinely see Russell now as one of those midfielders. So I think as good as Carol Aiting is, particularly, I mean, we don't know. I have no inside word on this, but if Carroll has said that he's not going to sign up next season, he wants to go somewhere else, and he's been open about that, then yeah, put your playing time into the one that you're going to keep.
Absolutely. Would you make any other changes for this then, Dave? I suppose the question is, Tino, can he play some part of this? I know he's still getting his fitness.
Possibly. I think I'd probably go back to the 4-4-2. I think you have to play Lees and Colwill, because I think the other options do weaken you there in a game that, as you said, you may be going a bit defensive. I wouldn't blow Pippa's hamstrings up again, so I would have Turton in for this game. I think probably Thomas on the right, and probably I think it's a game for Holmes to come back in and start. I think up front, I think Koroma and Rhodes wouldn't actually be a bad shout for this game. Give Danny Ward 90 minutes off, hopefully, but even when he's been rested, he's usually come on, to be fair. But yeah, I would mix it up, because it's still going to be a strong team, whatever. And it's still going to be a team who are more than capable of going and getting something. But 3 games in 7 days is a lot. And it's an important time of the season. You don't want to lose one of those players who you can't afford to lose.
No, completely agree. Tom, how do you see this one going? I know we've been a bit, maybe a bit more down on this one. I think it is a bit of a tougher test. But like you say, it's kind of dependent on what happens on Friday. But how do you think it's going to
go? Depends what they need, doesn't it, Brady? I think if we can keep it 0-0 for 80 minutes, 70 minutes, and they start to get a bit worried, they'll be opening it up a bit. You might be able to nick a 1-0 on the counter, but I think 0-0. I'd take that right now, but I think Town will be playing for the point anyway, or just not to lose. And I think defensively, especially against Luton, we don't know how we've played against QPR if you're listening to this for the Boro preview, but I'm hoping it's another clean sheet, and I'd like to think we can continue that.
Yeah, I don't think it's out of the question. I know Boro were in good form, but I don't think it's not like I don't think it's playing Bournemouth away or Fulham away. Not that Fulham away was a problem for us, but we could get something. I think for me it's kind of, it depends on the Bournemouth game for them, but also like first goal. I think if we score, I can see it being a draw. I think if they score, I think they'll win. Initially at the start of this run, I thought we'd get 4 points. I think we've actually got a good chance to get 6 points, and maybe rotate. And I don't know. We'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if. This team, they have continued to be written off by people who don't support Town, and they can chuck in a surprise. So I don't think it's out of the realm that we could even get a win here. But I think draw. If I'm going to have to put online, Dave, what about you?
Because of circumstances and context and various other things, I actually think Middlesbrough might win this 2-0. But this is a Town podcast, and we want to be a bit more positive than that. So let's say, I don't know, 8-0 Town.
Nice.
Cool. Yes. Jordan Rhodes 5, and then I think Turton will get his first, won't he?
I think the one thing I would say is that I think if they lose 2-0, I think if they've beaten QPR, we all just go, yeah, fine, no issue.
Yeah,
I agree. I think Turton first goal to score is not a bad shout, actually. It keeps getting closer every time he plays. So, yeah, not that I'm a betting man, but you could, I think that could be a bit of a cheeky one. But before we close up, Tom, have you remembered your sun cream?
Why, Brady?
Well, because it's time for hot takes. Oh my God, I messed that up. Keeping it in, I'm not cutting it out. It's time for hot takes.
Big bleak hot, mate. Big bleak hot, mate.
Oh, set it up so well, and I just that was a drop shot that hit the net, wasn't it, Tom? This is hot takes, the part where you share your spicy opinions about Huddersfield Town with your reason why, and we'll debate on the pod. Hot takes will be anonymous. Don't forget to email brady@takesthatchance.com for a chance to be featured. So, folks, we've been a bit positive on this pod, maybe a bit getting carried away, I think it'd be fair to say. But this hot take will bring us back down to earth a little bit, I think. quite defeatist, I would say. So it goes like this. The worst possible end to Town's season would be promotion to the Premier League. We neither have the squad to make it, any sort of go of it in the Prem, nor the resources to build such a squad to compete in the summer. It would lead to us getting battered every week, getting relegated, than having another couple of seasons like last season's. I'd rather us just miss out, thereby showing we are serious contenders and allowing us to build a stronger squad with an eye to going up next season. This is an interesting one for me because I don't know. This has been fierce debate among some of me and my friends, and I do think, I don't know. I kind of to and fro on this, but for me, like, Town are the sort of club where when you have a good season like this, I think you just got to take it and take the money. And hopefully, the positive part of me would be, Norwich. I know Norwich fans are getting a bit fed up of that, but that can be a successful business model, and maybe I don't know, bank the money and improve the team and make a better go of it. But I mean, who knows? Football's weird. Dave, what are your thoughts on this? Because you're an invested neutral. Do you think that's a bit too? I don't know. Do you think it's a bit too negative?
Firstly, I was fairly certain this was going to be should Lee Nichols be England's number one, and I was going to tell you to fuck off. Matt, you're going to have to bleep that fucker out.
No, I'm editing, mate. That's staying in.
Do you know what? I'll be brutally honest. There's another one for the drinking game. There is something in that, okay? Because I don't think Town are ready, but it depends where your ambitions are. They could do a lot worse than get promoted and actively plan to build a squad to win the following year's championship. That is probably the best way to approach it. And while it feels, there are a lot of Norwich fans who are extremely annoyed that they feel like they've been stuck in neutral when they've been promoted rather than actually pushing on in any way. In Town's particular situation right now, there would be a lot to be said for that. But there is the danger that you go up and you have a really bad season, and then instead of bouncing, you have a hangover like Town have had for a couple of years. And it's difficult. It is a fine line. I think the one thing we have to be realistic about in this spiciest of hot takes is that the reality is if they get promoted this season, you look at that first 11 and you think, okay, there's 3, maybe 4 players that you could realistically say can compete in the Premier League. There's no way Town could go and recruit 15 players to make us a competitive squad in the Premier League. So I think if they do go up, everybody sort of has to accept that maybe the sensible and correct thing to do is accept that this is wonderful, take the money, snap Sky's hand off, but understand that the real challenge comes the following year when you want to try and do it all again. But this time go up with a team that has got 7 or 8 players in the first 11 that you know you can keep and compete, and you can build from there.
Yeah, I mean, I know I was kind of dismissing it, but I think I do agree as well. As amazing as the squad has been and the togetherness, and I think that, Culbrand's, for me, learnt a lot this season, and we've seen the effect it's had. And obviously, we have better players than we had last season. I know that's another hot take, Dave, because you think the squad wasn't as bad as people made out last season, and I kind of agree with that. Anyway, that's another one. But yeah, you just never know. The thing is as well, like, I think there is part of me that would be interested to see how we did it this time. And I do think the only thing I would say is a part of this hot take, serious contenders if we don't go up and build a stronger squad next season. Well, I just think if we didn't go up, I think someone comes in for Lewis O'Brien, someone maybe comes in for Sorba Thomas, and then it's even harder to build because you can't replace Lewis O'Brien, you can't replace Sorba Thomas with 2 players. You'd have to. The
thing is, you could get promoted, and someone could still come in for Lewis O'Brien, and someone could still come in for Sorba Thomas, because ultimately, it's not a sexy thing to say, but Town have to be a selling club. Even if they get promoted into the Premier League, there's still a balance sheet to fulfill. There's still issues on there that need sorting longer term, and You can't. I've heard a couple of people sort of say that, are we going to lose the players that are going to stop us being competitive? Yeah, there is something in that, but you could lose them anyway. That's the thing. And if you keep them and they play really well, you could lose them in January. Premier League clubs have more money than God. If they want somebody enough, they will go and get them. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Tom, you've patiently waited for me and Dave debate this one. What your thoughts? Because I know you can to and fro on our hot takes, just as I can.
Personally, I want Town to be in the best position they possibly can be. So, and for me, there's no better feeling than getting promoted, is there? I mean, it's horrible getting relegated, and it's probably inevitable that we'd get relegated if we went up this season. But yeah, I get it. I get the whole, I don't want to go through all that again. But it's very rare that Town are in and it is the biggest league in the world, isn't it, on the big stage? And it does do a lot for the Town. And even though that second season was awful, I still tried to enjoy it as much as I could. But how good was the first season? Staying up, we played some really good games, had some really memorable moments. I disagree with this hot take. I'd be, if the opportunity's there, go for it. And you both touched on it. You can't guarantee the way Town are that they're a selling club. You can't guarantee anyone's here. You don't go up this season. And also the way the Championship is, look where we were last season and look where we are this season. Do you know what I mean? You can't tell with a Championship. Next season, you could have who's down there at the moment. Hull, you never know. You never know. So, yeah, take it whilst it's there, I think. And you never know. Town might go up. The beauty of the Premier League is you could get in Europe. You never know. That's how I'm always looking, Brady. It's like, oh, you have one good season.
Yeah. Who knows? I think what we're all saying here really with this hot take is Town will get promoted and, do a Leicester and win the Premier League after narrowly staying up. So I think that's where we need to leave it on, really. So I think we'll call it there then, guys. Big thanks to everyone for listening as always. Hope you all have a great Easter. Happy for Saki to all those celebrating as well. We will be back, Tom and I, to preview the Barnsley game next week. So, like I say, I hope you all have a good break. To tar for now and up the Town.
There's a team that is dear to its followers. The colours are bright blue and white. They're a team of renown, and they're the pride of the town. And the game of football is their delight. And all the while upon the field of play, thousands loudly cheer them on the way. Often you can hear them say, who can beat the Town today? And then the bells will ring so merrily, and every goal shall be a memory. So Town, play up and bring that cup back to Huddersfield. So Town, play up and bring the cup back to Huddersfield.